Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Thom Hartmann Program. This is Richard R.J. Eskow sitting in for Tom. It is a Friday, the end of another action-packed week. We'll get to that in a second. By the way, if you don't know me, I'm the host of the Zero Hour on We Act Radio. You can go to thisisthezerohour.com and find out more about that. I'm also a writer, and I try to stay out of trouble, and I don't do very well at that final task. Now, as I said, we had, of course, an action-packed week this week. What other kind of week have we been having lately except an action-packed week? So, of course, we're going to get to some of the news stories. But first, I don't know if you feel the way I do, but it seems to me that since Donald Trump got elected, the news cycle has accelerated to a frenetic pace. It was always a fast-paced culture that we live in, but the news stories are breaking so often, so fast, so furious, in this case, literally furious when it comes to Trump and his white nationalist followers, that sometimes I have to wonder whether we can even keep pace with it, whether we can even absorb all the information that's being thrown our way. So before we get to the news events of recent cycles, I want to step out of the pace of current events and look backwards in history for a feature I'm going to call the Mystery Leftist. This is going to be a pop quiz for listeners of the Thom Hartmann Program. I'm going to offer 2 or 3 quotes from a mystery troublemaker of past history and give you a few minutes to tell me who you think it might be. Obviously, we're not taking calls in this segment, but you can tweet it at us or do whatever you want, or just say it in your mind and perhaps we'll hear it. Okay, Mystery Leftist said this: labor is the great source from which nearly all, if not all, human comforts and necessities are drawn. Now, while you ponder that quote, bear in mind that labor itself, meaning organized labor unions, are once again rising in popularity. There was a time in this country not so long ago when most working, or a large number of working people, belonged to labor unions. Now, outside of the government sector, only about 7% of the working population belongs to a union. That number was much higher in the 1960s, and wages were much higher in the 1960s. Benefits were improving in the 1960s. Inequality was much lower. Those things are very much related. Now, labor came in for some unpopularity, especially after the 1990s when Democrats worked very hard to distance themselves from labor and seemed to be echoing the kind of rhetoric of the Republicans. In fact, definitely did echo the rhetoric of the Republicans in saying that that labor was a quote-unquote special interest. Well, I'm sorry. The interests of a majority of Americans, a vast majority of Americans who are wage earners and working people in their everyday lives, is not a special interest. That's us as a people. A special interest is a small minority that tries to manipulate the system for their own selfish benefit. So, who is this mystery leftist of which I speak? Second quote: labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital and deserves much higher consideration. Wow, who is this commie? I'll get to that in another minute. But while we talk about the need for organized labor in this country, let us remember that during the prior administration, there was a time when Democrats had majorities in both houses of Congress and conceivably could have passed the Employee Free Choice Act. They chose not to do so. That is, in my mind, a horrendous oversight. Now, let us go to the third quote from our mystery troublemaker. Third quote goes as follows: if at any time all labor should cease, at the end of a single year, there could scarcely be one human being alive. All would have perished for want of substance. Now, again, Who is our mystery leftist? Well, let's think about the way we treat working people in this country, particularly if they are immigrants. There was a story in the paper recently about working people in the Texas area who did not come to this country with the proper documentation. The headline was, "If they deport all of us, who will rebuild?" Quote unquote. Undocumented workers could be the key to Texas recovery. The premise of this article, which was, on the one hand, kind of liberal-minded because it talked about the plight of undocumented workers in the Houston area, but the whole premise of it was we need undocumented workers because nobody else will do this work, and therefore we should not keep deporting undocumented workers until Houston is rebuilt. In fact, this article, if I can find it here, it quotes the head of the Houston Contractors Association saying if they would relax the rules, meaning, of course, stop deporting people, honestly, that would be great. We could use it. That's Jeffrey Nielsen, Executive Vice President of the Houston Contractors Association. He said every member of the association, even before Hurricane Harvey, was grappling with a shortage of workers. Now they're really short of workers. He went on to say, the truth is there are not a lot of people jumping up and down to do civil construction work in Texas. It's hot, and these jobs are pouring concrete or worse, hot asphalt. That's the reality of it. We need more people than ever. So basically, the whole premise of this article seems to be, well, we've got to stop deporting people until they've done the heavy lifting and hard work to rebuild Houston. And when that is done, we'll kick them out. Now, the same attitude was present in an article about Saratoga, New York. Headline in the Albany Times-Union, track worker, the headline is ICE returns, that's the immigration enforcers, ICE returns to Saratoga, arresting 8 from Mexico. Now, why did this suddenly start to happen again? Apparently there had been a moratorium. Nobody had been arrested and facing deportation as an undocumented worker in Saratoga for a while. Why did it start again? Because racetrack season was over. So, again, disposable workers, working people who helped Saratoga profit from the racing season, and as soon as it was over, kick them out. Now they want workers to rebuild Houston and then kick them out. That is a heartless, ruthless, horrible way to look at working people. It is inhuman. It is immoral. It is labor serving the interests of capital rather than the other way around. Do I sound like a communist? Do I sound like a subversive? Does my mystery leftist sound like a communist? Does he sound like a subversive? Does he sound like an un-American person who every school child in this country should condemn and be taught to condemn with every breath? Perhaps. His name, Abraham Lincoln. There was a time in this country not so long ago when politicians of both parties were willing and able to say that working people in this country deserve a fair shake. Take a look sometime at the 1956 party platform for the Republican Party. That's right, Dwight D. Eisenhower's Republican Party. That party platform celebrates working people. It does so. Now, I don't agree with the Eisenhower Republicans' economic ideology, but even they were more than willing, and of course they're moderate by today's Republican standards, but they were more than willing, for example, to brag about the fact that during President Eisenhower's first administration, 1 million more people joined unions. That was bragged about in the Republican Party platform. Can you imagine a Democrat of today? Now, the Democratic Party is changing, and we're going to be talking about that on this show. But can you imagine a Democrat of the last 20 years bragging that union membership went up while they were president? No. But it's time for that to start happening again. If Dwight D. Eisenhower can brag about it, Democrats should most certainly brag about it. Now, the Dwight D. Eisenhower Republican Party platform also bragged that 2 million people were added to Social Security. That's right, Social Security was expanded during Dwight D. Eisenhower's first administration. We need a party that will fight for those things today, that will fight to increase the number of working people who belong to unions, that will fight for better wages and benefits for working people, that will fight to get more people on Social Security, or to, and better yet, in today's day and age, or I should say even better, to increase Social Security's benefits, which are inadequate to meet people's needs. You know, when you compare Social Security benefits in this country to comparable programs in other developed countries, we're close to the bottom of the list. That should be unacceptable. And to those of us like my mystery troublemaker, President Abraham Lincoln, I suspect it would be absolutely unacceptable. So as we prepare to go to our first break, think about this. If it was okay for Abraham Lincoln to say it, why isn't it okay for the political leaders of today to say it? If it was okay for Dwight D. Eisenhower to say it, why is it considered extreme for Democrats of today to say it?